Planet Earth.
Some call me nature.
I am very passionate about the planet.
Earth.
A living, breathing planet capable of sustaining whatever life forms we see fit to deposit on it.
Spock, judging by the pollution content of the atmosphere, I believe we have arrived.
It's the planet stupid.
No. It's the planet stupid.
And as mentioned, our guide for It's the Planet Stupid is eco-journalist Belinda Weymouth. Belinda, hello. Welcome.
Hello. How are you?
I am well, and I watched with interest as the nations got together to try to put together some sort of strategy on the climate catastrophe that is coming. And, I think very little of people as a collective. I think human beings are the scourge of the earth. The exception being, of course, you and the people who watch and participate with this show. But I'd say apart from those people, it's very hard to find the collective of humanity doing anything that's really positive. This is my worldview, not yours. You are an optimist, of course. But sadly, the nations of the world, the most powerful, wealthiest nations of the world, have once again fallen into what I'd suggest is a predictable, awful decision as opposed to an uplifting decision when it comes to climate. Do you want to tell everybody what Saudi Arabia and Russia have done with the fossil fuel pronouncements, or do you want me to tell everybody?
Well, I can tell them.
Okay.
I love how you really set this up, how you feel about humanity. And I get it. When you see what happens at these COPs, it's awful. But, the decision, Mark, to have the last three, Egypt, United Arab Emirates, and then I always say this country's name wrong. Maybe you'll say it for me. Azerbaijan. Yes, there we go. Between the two of us, oh my God, we're amazing. Okay, so to have
it's no wonder we can't come to some kind of agreement. We can't even say each other's countries' names. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, but to have COP in 3 petrochemical states is bonkers. Now, this is last year, and this is them where they felt triumphant because they had actually got the wording, into the final agreement that we were going to be moving away from fossil fuels. And then what happened this year was, Russia and Saudi Arabia got in there and lobbied. I mean, there were 1,700 oil lobbyists at COP this year, COP 29. That is insane. This is about the climate and what the biggest thing that's driving the climate. I mean, for the US, it's absolutely our oil and gas use. It's crazy. For other countries, it may be deforestation. But here and in developed nations, it's the energy that we use. And they lobbied and they got the ear of United Nations delegates, and they made sure in the final, this is what we agree to. We're not going to put it, in the phasing out of fossil fuels. And people just lost their minds. I mean, people go nuts. I actually want to go to the next COP, but I think, they're sort of devolving into something terrible because we're really having this, drag, sort of knockdown, drag out fight. And it's the thing we've talked about quite often on the show, change is really hard, for human beings, who you say are the scourge of the earth, scourge of the earth. Change is really difficult for us. We don't like it. And there's such a sort of push-pull happening because we are making this transition, I mean, since Russia invaded Ukraine, the EU is up to 50% of their electricity production comes from renewable sources, I mean, the change is happening. And, we're about to have administration change here, which is going to try and swing the pendulum in the other direction. And of course, that had reverberations through COP29. I mean, they're all freaked out. What is the Trump administration? What effect will that have in the world? And I just see this as a very, very, very difficult transition for us to make. And it's because of money. It's money and power,
Yeah, I mean, the transition. You're talking transition from fuels to alternative energies.
Yes, the transition to renewables, and it's not going to be. It's not going to be a simple
I just want
thing.
to when you were talking about transition,
we don't want to mistake it with the administration transition we're about to have. So,
Yeah.
so the COP29 ended up being. Yeah.
To summarize, where yeah, I apologize. We're in a kind of internet hell where now this is not my normal internet. I'm on a line that is a little delayed, and I think you are too. So I apologize for talking past each other. But what I was going to mention is that, again, as you suggested, the rich petronations, the Saudi Arabias, the Russias of the world, this is a little like the UN. They're going to, because you made me think of it just now when you said this is turning into something else. And I think it is this performative thing where nations pledge something. They pledge to try to get off fossil fuels. And we don't even know that those pledges are going to be honored. They haven't really been honored at this point. And then really to the point you're making, the broader point, they can't even in a performative way get a kind of agreement to get off of these fossil fuels or transition off of these fossil fuels, even as they recognize these dangerous levels of global warming. It's again, it's a pretty sad state of things when you can't even get them to agree to language on a non-binding agreement. Okay, this isn't something that, anybody's going to come over and there's no enforcement mechanism really for all of this. So I was really downcast to see it,
Yeah, and I think particularly with, 2015, the COP that happened in Paris, where all the, nations of the world agreed to 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming. That was such a huge sort of breakthrough moment. And I think everyone was so heartened by that and like, okay, we have this goal and we're going to try and meet it. But of course, we haven't met it. We're already at 1.5 degrees Celsius of heating. Now, not universally all the time, but Ventura County, north of where we live, Mark, they're at 1.3 degrees, Celsius of extra heat in the atmosphere, and different places around the world have those moments, and we're already seeing, the effects of how much carbon is in the atmosphere already. I mean, these are dire, they're absolutely dire, and I sent you the article, I think, about the attribution that attribution scientists have been looking at, so storms, floods, droughts, heat waves, these terrible fires. And, they attribute the severity of them to climate change. And when you look at the last couple of decades, millions of people have died from heat waves. And that includes thousands of infants, of babies. So it's game on and it's real. So then when you have these leaders come together to supposedly talk about doing something about this, this is a woman, this is in Portugal, and she's screaming for help, and it's like, lady, get in your car and start driving. Like, this is, I don't know who you think is next door and who can stop the fire that's, in the background. I mean, this is so intense.
And this is just to the point that was being made, and you just referenced the article. The article, I think it's in The Guardian, it just begins to essentially bring a coherence to all of these different events. 24 previously impossible heat waves have struck communities across the planet, they say, and new assessment has shown, providing stark evidence of how severely human-caused global heating is supercharging extreme weather. The complete cause and effect is so well established at this point. And so you've got these impossible heat waves that you talk about that have taken lives in North America, Europe, Asia. And this would not happen without human-caused climate change, is the point.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the fact that we're not, at this moment doing everything we can to, curb our emissions and, get right-sized on the planet as far as resources and living sustainably goes, I think for advocates and activists and scientists, who go to COP to advise and to try and agitate, I mean, they're losing their minds. And scientists say, this is really hard to kind of hold on to our equilibrium, because we really see these, stark facts. And then to have an administration about to take over, and, they're talking about, day one, they're going after it's a no to migrants and it's yes to fossil fuels. And, this is insanity. And the fact is, the three things that are driving the use of energy in the world, one of them is air conditioning, because people are too hot. You know,
Sure.
they need to cool down, and so they need air conditioning. And, you know, 40% of Africans don't have access to electricity. So when they go to COP, I mean, this makes me emotional, you know, 40%. So when they go to COP, this is their lives, Mark. You know, this is their children, this is their survival. And, you know, that's a continent that is already, you know, on the edge, you know. And so to be having these droughts, to be having these heat waves, and to not be able to get relief from them, I mean, the rest of the world needs to step up its humanity. You know, that's what developing nations need
Well,
to do.
that's what the
isn't it?
developing nations are saying. I mean, they're saying exactly that. They're saying,
Yeah.
you know, this paltry amount that you've given us to try to beat back climate change and climate crisis related problems is just simply not enough. And you talk about the drought, and you talk about, you know, Azerbaijan and these other areas in which, you know, these COP nations meet. There are also these South Pacific nations, as you've reported before, you know, these small islands that are already being engulfed by rising seas. So
Yeah.
you see the effects all over the globe. It seems a clarion call by nature, and yet, as you've suggested before, we just don't do well with this kind of thing. We don't do well with the change, which you have noted here today, and we don't do well with slow moving, perceived as slower moving future issues. We don't do well as a species with that stuff.
Yeah. Something that's crescent, which means slow moving. Yeah, we just can't see it. And also, you can't see CO2 going into the atmosphere. And it was like I was saying also last week, you know, to be able to see the bigger picture, the sort of meta picture, because obviously what drove a lot of people when they were voting was the economy. But what you have to realize is the American economy is being really hurt by climate change. I think they said the bill for last year for climate change related disasters was, you know, over $1 trillion. And most of the damage was done here in the US. We had huge damage to infrastructure through, you know, flooding and storms and things. So, and a lot of infrastructure to damage, you know, because it's a very developed country and it's a huge country. But yes, it's a little bit mind-boggling, and it's a little bit mind-boggling to have a president-elect who's going to take office on January, 20th, 21st, and straight away, says he's going to be, drilling. He's going to open up, those LNG, the liquefied natural gas projects, the 5 down the coast of Texas and Louisiana that President Biden put a stop to in January. Well, Trump's team believes that those are just a slam dunk. They take, office and the next day those will be up and running. They won't be, because they still need their environmental assessments done. And until that gets, overturned, that, you can actually do environmental assessments of, fossil fuel projects. But it's also, federal land, oceans, Native American land, they're talking about, drilling everywhere. And we had the listener ask last week about ANWR, the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. And obviously it won't quite look like that because it's, covered in snow. It's home to musk ox, caribou, polar bears, and lots of different species of bird. That's Alaska. And Alaska, they like oil drilling, but you've got tribes divided. Some tribes are saying, we want the income, and other tribes are saying, no, this is sacred land. These are sacred animals. We can't do it. It's the size of South Carolina, by the way, the area that they're looking at and saying we're going to open it up, and they are particularly interested in the North Shore. Interestingly, back in the 80s, some native corporations that did hold rights to drill there, looks there at the caribou, they did put down a test drill, and they've been very quiet on the results. So people don't really know, what's there. And it will be interesting also to see if oil companies sort of rush up there, because the fact is we're already at peak. Last year was our biggest year for drilling for gas and oil. That happened under the Biden administration as a direct result of COVID and what happened to the economy, and then Russia's invasion of Ukraine. We upped our drilling because we needed to supply the world, or we felt that we needed to supply the world. So why we would need to go into this pristine reserve when we're already producing so much oil and gas.
Well, that's the point. It became a political talking point for Donald Trump, and to suggest somehow that we are falling way behind in whatever, fill in the blank, economy, oil production, whatever, that was part of his dance. And people were responsive, like, yeah, I don't want to fall behind. Wow, we're falling behind. I didn't even realize we're falling behind. Yeah,
no, we're ahead.
Yeah, actually, we're ahead, as you've just noted, and we've never produced more. And in fact, you could express frustration with the Biden administration for not being more aggressive in this way. But again, given the alternative, and it really is sadly one of these things where you just have to choose one or the other. I'd suggest the existing administration, the Biden administration, is much better for the environment than the incoming administration, which doesn't care at all about the environment to the extent that they will dry clean all government websites from any messaging at all or mention of climate change, to the point that there are certain appointments who are being instructed not to mention climate change in any way. So at Interior, at EPA, these are high-profile government agencies that are going to be run by people who will not even mention the words climate change. And last thing, I just wanted to, from the article that you referenced, the extreme weather events they point to, these impossible extreme weather events with a vanishing low probability of happening without the turbocharge of human-caused global heating, are particularly striking, they say. So these are weather events that one might find, but they're actually much more amplified than we'd ever find in any kind of natural, if you will, Earth laboratory. They show that the burning of fossil fuels has so dramatically changed the climate that heat waves are hitting communities with a severity and frequency never seen during the entire development of human civilization over the past 5,000 years. This is something you were just referencing. It's a new world for which cities, hospitals, roads, and farms are unprepared, and a world that gets even more dangerous every day as carbon emissions continue to be pumped into the atmosphere. And so that, in summary, is where we are, with more and more of these events, with no plans to really roll back consumption or these fossil fuel, the dependence on fossil fuel, and these fossil fuel-induced issues will continue to crop up in ways that we've never seen and with a severity we've never seen before.
Yeah. It'll make everything harder. It's harder to grow crops when you don't have water, and that's a thing that really we should be taking, notice of, because we have a huge global population, and to not be able to feed people because of this extreme weather. And it's already happening. And like I was saying last week, it's one of the huge push factors in the migration of all these people, from African nations, from South American and Central American nations, northward to richer countries where they're hoping they'll be able to make enough money to feed their families, and that's a completely understandable impulse. We have a huge impulse to want to survive. But, when we think about our survival on a, sort of a bigger picture, we're just myopic. It's kind of unbelievable to me. But anyway, I sound
all right.
like a
Well,
broken
but before we have to say goodbye, did you want to, the bear stuff that you did last time, you had some great video on that. And then you had some video that you also sent along with elephants. You just come from this great trip to Asia, and Albert, do you have that stuff? It's really cool. So tell us what we're looking at.
Okay, so this is the day that Jake and I spent at the elephant village and sanctuary outside of Luang Prabang. That's us washing the elephants. You get this big, very intense scrubbing brush, and you basically scrub their skin, and they love it. And you get to feed them, you get to hang out with them, walk with them in teak forests. I mean, it was so magical, Mark. And here's the thing about these elephants. So they have 7 female elephants who have been saved from the logging industry. That means they're happy when they flap their ears like that. Oh, and the mahout, the guy in charge of the elephant, he was getting it to splash its trunk like that. So Jake and I were really getting a shower while we were doing our elephant bathing. But these elephants, they're all females, and they've been saved from the logging industry, where they are forced to work for 16 hours a day. They are fed amphetamines. They are poked with knives and hooks in their hindquarters to drive them. It's incredibly cruel and dangerous. One of the elephants who's there has lost part of her foot because she stepped on a landmine. The thing that's slightly sad, I also sent the website, and if you go to that link, Albert, it will show the 7 different ladies who are there, and it gives you like a little blurb about each one of them and tells you about their personalities. So elephants, as you can see, love to eat. In their natural state, Mark, they eat for 20 hours a day and they only sleep for 4. And then they get back on the job of eating because they're 3 tons, the females, and the males are 4 tons. So all they're eating is, cellulose. It's complete, they're eating the trunks of banana trees. They eat sugarcane. They eat bananas. You have to be careful. They're not allowed to have too many bananas or sugarcane because they can get diabetes. So at the sanctuary, which was started by an Australian and a German guy back in 2001, they said, look, something has to be done for these elephants that are in this really cruel industry. And they set up this sanctuary and village, and tourists who go there to spend the day with these amazing animals, the revenue then pays for the mahout. They have one mahout who looks after them. There's no elephant riding here. That's considered, no, you don't do that anymore. So they phased that out at this place in 2019. And then also money goes back to the logging industry owners. So they get compensated for not having these beasts of burden, these workhorses anymore. During COVID, when there were no tourists in Luang Prabang, the elephants actually, these women had to, these female elephants had to go back and work in the logging industry because there wasn't tourism, money.
So
I know. And when you hear about, it's just ghastly. But now they're back. They're hanging out every day. They get completely spoiled and loved up. There are 2 babies, but they don't let the babies come and be with the tourists. They stay in the 80 hectares that they have at night of jungle where these elephants get taken back. They hang out with the babies. And then they come back the next day, to be with the tourists and, earn, money in a very different way than they used to be earning money. The thing that's so important about these sanctuaries, one of the things that's a bit sad is the male elephants don't get rescued because they're too aggressive. Asian female elephants don't have ivory, no tusks. So they are not in danger from that horrible, industry, which is great. But they said Laos was once the home of, 1 million elephants. They're now down to 1,000. 500 of them are working in the logging industry and 500 are in sanctuaries. Some of these sanctuaries aren't so sanctuary. They have to do elephant rides all day long. And, that's not cool. Don't ride an elephant, guys, when you go on holiday.
Well, the elephant, I don't mean to, I'll just keep this very brief, but elephants are, if you will, aware of their strength. They know they are the greatest beast, if you want to call it that, in the jungle and in the world, that they are, that they have a sense of that. And so that has to be beaten out of them in order to tame them for a ride, to give rides to tourists. That's done, and I'm not going to detail that now, but just trust me, I know this area very well, and it is done in the most horrifying way to beat that animal, and it's done with a very young animal. You can't beat an adult elephant into submission. They take very young animals, and the entire process is horrifying. So anyway, once they've, quote, tamed that elephant, then it grows up fearing the mahouts that were the trainers, and the mahouts, the trainers. They have these bull hooks and these other ways in which they can make the elephant do what they want. And that's how these rides happen for tourists. And that's how the other sort of work that elephants do transpires. It happens in this very cruel, ongoing, cruel way. So the world of the elephant is one of abuse, and it's pretty awful. And it's great that these sanctuaries exist. I love that you visited one. And in fact, I stayed, as I say, I visited Luang Prabang. I was there and I didn't get to an elephant sanctuary. And I feel that that's a failing of my trip. You made me want to go back. But that these great, majestic animals need our help is indisputable. It's absolutely, and I didn't know those numbers are shocking to think that there are just 1,000 left in that area.
Yeah. No, it's really dire. And what they're very nervous about is that, there's less and less land all the time because there are more and more people. And there's a lot of elephant-human conflict on the continent of Africa because elephants are hungry. Like I said, they eat 20 hours a day. They eat, I can't remember how many kilograms, 300 kilograms. I mean, liters and liters of water. I mean, it takes a lot to, keep that big body going. And the conflict that's happening with humans in Africa is really, terrible. And so we have to be really mindful about these big animals if we want to keep them. And it's definitely a concern in Laos. Like, what happens is if we have less room for them, how do we maintain them? And so to see these sanctuaries and these people who are so devoted, because the mahouts here, they're just lovely with the animals, and they teach you how to be a mahout. They tell you the words for, eat, no, kneel down, all the things that they get them to do. You learn to do that. And you've got to go back, Mark, because you can stay overnight there. They've got lodgings, there's a restaurant, there's a swimming pool, and you can go in the morning with the mahouts to the jungle where the elephants are, and you can bring them back with you. Walking through this teak forest with elephants.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
It was really, Jake and I were like children. We were sort of giddy with, the joy of being with them. And when they flat their ears, it just was really, it was so gorgeous.
They're just wondrous and smart and sentient, of course, like all creatures are. Feeling, emotional, but sophisticated as well. It's it's really exciting to see your experience with them. All right, well, thank you for this. I feel like this is a nice little tonic, even though I understand some of the overall elephant news may not be happy, but it's good to see you interacting with those elephants that are safe for the moment. And the COP nations who, again, they couldn't get a deal that really is worth anything. That's no surprise. But I love that you guys, thank you for these elephant pictures and the elephant videos. This is just the absolute coolest. So that's a to be continued story because the elephants in India, et cetera, there's a whole other world of elephant worship where they kind of claim to elevate elephant to like sort of a vaulted status in society, and they're actually one of the more mistreated creatures in those societies. I'm talking about India and other parts of Asia. So thank you, Belinda. Have a happy Thanksgiving. And
yes, you too.
We're looking forward to a lot more. Appreciate it. Belinda Weymouth, everybody. That is It's the Planet Stupid for today. Bye-bye.
More
It's the Planet Stupid. No, it's the Planet Stupid.
next time, only on The Mark Thompson Show.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.